Good morrow, everybody. I thought I'd hop on here today to talk about something that I get asked pretty much every single day over on TikTok. And that question is, hey Laura, how do you do your voices? And it is so desperately hard to answer those questions on TikTok because you've got a character limit on your comments, and also I don't think the entire explanation of how I do my voices would fit nicely into a 1-minute video, you know? So here I am, your humble impressionist, here to talk to you today about the science of voice acting in possibly the most non-scientific way possible. You're welcome. I've just realised I have a cup of tea every single time I do a video. Let's make it continue! In all honesty, I have little to no idea about the science or technicalities that go into becoming a voice actor because I'm not actually a voice actor, I'm just a very, very amateur impressionist. Emphasis on the amateur part. You can pretty much ask anybody from my childhood, my family, my old friends. I have, for some reason, been able to slip in and out of accents very, very naturally and do really daft voices ever since I was a kid. And I'm 22 now and I'm only just about putting that into practice. It's a useless talent that I've always had for some reason, I don't know why. But I'm gonna try my best today to explain how I actually do my voices. So in my very non-professional opinion, there are 4 aspects of a voice you need to take into account before you try and impersonate a certain character. And I will go through those for you now. So the first thing you need to take into account is the accent. That is probably the most important thing about voicing a character, because if you've not got the accent down, it's pretty much null and void. And then number 2, I'd say, is the pitch of how they speak. So do they have quite a high-pitched voice, or do they have a low-pitched voice, or is it quite middle ground, so quite neutral? Then the third thing is the speed in which they talk. Do they have quite a slow sounding voice? Do they elongate their sentences? Or do they speak very, 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 very quickly? And the final thing, number 4, is distinctive aspects. Does a character have a very recognizable voice for some reason? Is there a distinctive aspect you can sort of take out of that voice and incorporate into it yourself? I think the best example for this is probably the main 6 because they just sound completely different. They've all got very distinctive voices for very different reasons. So I'm gonna use those guys today. Surprise, surprise! So I think the best one to start with is Pinkie Pie because pretty much everybody knows what Pinkie Pie sounds like. Even if you haven't seen the show, her voice is just so recognizable, it's hard to miss. So if we take into account the 4 things that I mentioned previously, we need to talk about our accent first. And although Pinkie Pie is a pony and she's from Equestria, she does have a Canadian accent because she's in fact voiced by Andrea Livman, who is Canadian, insert picture here. And obviously I'm not Canadian, so in that sense, I'll need to put on an accent.
And a Canadian accent for me sounds sort of like this.
I'm so sorry if I offend any Canadians. Y'all great. Then the second thing is the pitch, and we all know Pinkie Pie has probably the highest pitched voice out of any character ever. Except Alvin and the Chipmunks, that's crazy. And my voice, quite naturally, I think for a woman, is quite low, because I'm from the north of England, and I think naturally northerners speak a lot lower in tone than southerners might do. So I have to pick up my voice from my natural range and get it into my head voice. I've heard voice actors talk about their head voices, mid voices, and chest voices quite a lot as well. So for different characters, you might need to go into different ranges. So for Pinkie Pie, like I said, it's head voice, so it's
Right up here.
And the third aspect that I was saying before is the speed in which they talk, and Pinkie Pie speaks ridiculously quickly.
I mean, which do you think, Rarity? Chimichurri or Chimichanga? Chimichurri, Chimichanga, Chimichurri, Chimichanga.
That's how it works. You need to take into account the speed in which a character talks, because if a lot of the time they speak quite slowly and then you all of a sudden start doing an impression that's very, 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 very fast, it might then become unrecognizable to an audience.
And then for Pinkie Pie, if I start talking really slowly, I will eventually go into a more of a Fluttershy voice because she talks really, really slowly.
And it's hard in that aspect as well because Pinkie and Fluttershy are voiced by the same person. If you mess up the speed a little bit like that, like I just did, you can slip into a different character. It's very, very easily done. And then finally, it's the distinctive aspect of the voice. And for me, the distinctive aspect of Pinkie's voice is the way she sort of elongates the start of her sentences.
Well, I mean, which do you think, Rarity?
She sort of makes the start of her sentences very, very long before then going into something very, very sharp and very, very quick. She'll start slow and then she'll just skyrocket off. So that's what I like to pick out for Pinkie Pie. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you've got a character like Rainbow Dash, who is very, very different. Accent-wise, it's the same, it's a Canadian accent. Pretty much the entire cast of MLP is Canadian. So you pick out the Canadian accent again, and then you start thinking about the pitch. And even though Rainbow Dash's voice is very, very raspy, it is not actually in my chest voice that I do Rainbow Dash. It is actually in my head voice. And Ashley Ball herself, who voices Rainbow Dash, insert picture here, she's also said that Rainbow Dash is in her head voice and Applejack is more in her chest voice because Applejack's got a lower voice naturally than Rainbow Dash does.
So I like to get up here again for Rainbow Dash.
And then we move on to speed. Even though Dash is the fastest pony in all of Equestria, she doesn't really speak very, very quickly a lot of the time like Pinkie Pie might do. She's sort of normal in the way that she speaks. It's sort of middle ground, you know, like the way I'm speaking to you guys now. She might speak faster in certain situations, like anyone would do, and then slower in other situations, again, like anyone would do. So it's quite normal. And then we're on to the recognizable, distinctive aspect of the voice. And for Dash, it has got to be the raspiness. It's so important to get that raspiness down. If you want to do Dash's voice,
You've gotta hurt your throat a little bit to do Dash's voice. It's gonna get pretty sore, but it's worth it, you know?
it is so raspy. It does hurt to do it for a long period of time, but you know, it's getting more natural to me, I think. It's quite normal.
And the same as Pinkie Pie, she sort of elongates the start of her sentences and says things like, it needs to be about 20% cooler.
Now I'm going to move on to an interesting one, which is Rarity, because Rarity has a completely different voice and a completely different accent as well. Even though she's again voiced by a Canadian actress, Tabitha St. Germain, who is amazing, Rarity has a completely different accent than anyone else. She's got a very distinctive voice. In the start of the series, it wasn't as accentuated as it was towards the end, but then now in Pony Life, she literally sounds so English, it's hilarious. She's got a sort of half Canadian, half English accent. It comes out in different situations. There's certain words that she'll say that sound more towards the Canadian side, and then she'll say other things that sound more English, very southern English, you know? It's because she's got that aspect of being a posh pony, you know? That's how Rarity works. So for the accent, it is quite difficult for Rarity because naturally I can do quite a good southern English accent because, you know, I am English. But then there are certain things you need to sort of roll your R's on a little bit more, you know? She'll say things like, oh, look at the state of my hair. Instead of saying, look at the state of my hair, with the R, she'll say, hair, hair. It's a very confusing accent at Grant, but if you don't latch onto that accent quite soon, then you lose number 4, you lose the distinctive aspect, because that is Rarity's distinctive aspect, is her accent. The same with Applejack. Applejack's distinctive aspect is the Tennessee accent. It's hard. So sometimes the little topics that I mentioned, they overlap. So sometimes the accent can be the distinctive aspect of a character's voice. Sometimes the pitch can be the distinctive aspect, or the speed. It just completely depends on the character. So in this aspect, Rarity's accent and the way she articulates her sentences and accentuates her words, they're very much her distinctive aspect as well as just the accent.
For Rarity, I always accentuate my words, and some words I accentuate more. We're doing big, we're doing bold.
Literally, think about Rarity as being a Word document. You have the script, and some words are literally going to be bold or in italics, and that is literally how I try and do Rarity's accent.
We're doing big, we're doing bold.
There are a lot of different things you need to take into account for Rarity's accent. It's a pretty difficult one, but I'm getting there, I think. So yeah, like I say, the subjects can overlap. It's a crazy thing. But if you take those 4 things into consideration, so the accent, the pitch, the speed, and the distinctive aspect, I think you're gonna get voices down. Again, I am not a professional. This is my completely amateur point of view. But that's how I personally do my voices. In some ways as well, I think you've either got it or you don't. It's difficult. And sometimes all it comes down to is being a fan of the show, knowing the show very well, and knowing all the different traits of a character. How a character would act in a certain situation, would the speed of their voice actually change in a different situation, would their pitch change, etc.
I mean, I know for a fact that Fluttershy's voice might get a little bit more speedy if she was getting anxious, you know?
Personally, myself, I think I've got a good ear for listening to characters' voices and then just being able to do it straight afterwards. It's so strange, but sometimes you can literally hear and sort of imagine what a certain character would say in a specific situation, and then after that,
you can ad-lib. So you can slip in a character's accents whenever you want. And Rainbow Dash thinks that's 20% cooler.
And that's what I do on TikTok. I reply to people's comments all the time, and I literally just ad-lib the entire situation. I get into a certain character's mindset and I just think about what they're gonna respond with in that situation. It's weird, but that's how I do it. It just comes naturally, and I do not know why. But from a technical point of view, those 4 things that I mentioned previously, they're probably the best way of going about starting to impersonate characters. I hope you enjoyed the science of voice acting, my dudes. Science. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you want to check out some of my impersonations and voice acting sort of things, just head on over to my TikTok. It's all linked down below, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Bye!